Once upon a time, in the busy town of Umoja in eastern Nigeria, there lived a girl named Mary. She lived alone with her gentle and hardworking father, John. Mary's mother had passed away when she was a tiny baby, leaving John to raise her all by himself. For 17 years, John, a well-known businessman who ran a shop selling clothes and goods near the Pine Market, took great care of Mary. He made sure she had nice dresses, good food, and a cozy home. The two of them were very close, spending their days laughing, working at the shop, and telling stories. Mary loved her father so much that she couldn't imagine a day without him. One day, Mary got admission into a college in Oden, a town about 3 hours away from Umoja. She didn't want to leave her father, but John sat her down and said, "Mary, education is the key to a bright future. I'll visit you often, I promise." Mary trusted her father because he always kept his word. So, with a heavy heart, she packed her bags and left for school. At college, she made new friends who made her days fun and exciting. She joined a drama club, where she learned to act and hide her true feelings, a skill that would soon come in handy. She also met a boy named Peter, a quiet student who liked her but was too shy to say so. Mary didn't notice his feelings, too focused on her father back home. After many months away, Mary came back home for the holidays. She couldn't wait to see her father and hug him tight. But when she walked into their small house near the Pine Market, she froze. A strange woman stood there, smiling at her. "Hello, Mary. I'm Anne, your father's friend," the woman said cheerfully. Just then, John walked in, his face lighting up as he saw Mary. "My daughter's home," he exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. Then he turned to Anne and said, "Mary, meet Anne. She's been keeping me company while you were away. She helps me at the shop sometimes too." Mary's heart sank. She forced a smile, but inside, she felt like her world was falling apart. She had always thought her father belonged to her alone. They had a special bond, one she didn't want anyone to break. But she didn't want to upset John, so she pretended to be happy. "Nice to meet you, Anne," she said, her voice shaky. Anne smiled back, thinking Mary liked her. What she didn't know was that Mary was hiding a storm of anger and jealousy, sharpened by her new acting skills. That evening, Mary watched Anne closely. They sat together in the parlor, watching TV and chatting. Anne laughed and talked about how much she liked John and how she enjoyed helping at the shop. Mary nodded and smiled, but in her mind, she was already planning how to get rid of this intruder. The next morning, Anne offered to cook John's favorite meal, a vegetable stew with yam. Mary saw her chance. She walked into the kitchen and said, "Oh, you're cooking. That's nice." Anne beamed and said, "Yes, your father loves this too." Mary smiled sweetly, but her heart was racing with a wicked idea. While Anne stepped out to fetch water, Mary grabbed a small bag of salt and poured it into the stew. She stirred it quickly and left the kitchen. She wanted her father to taste the bad food and send Anne away. Later, when John called Anne to the dining table, Mary sat quietly, waiting for her plan to work. Anne served the food, and John took a big bite. To Mary's shock, he smiled and said, "Anne, this is delicious." Mary's eyes widened. She tasted the stew herself, and it was so salty she nearly spat it out. How could her father like it? Then she noticed Anne winking at her. Mary realized Anne had made 2 pots, one good for John and one bad for her. Mary had been tricked. She stormed off to her room, pretending to feel sick, but really plotting her next move. The next day, Mary decided to up her game. She overheard Anne telling John about a special necklace she'd lost, a gift from her late mother. Mary saw an opportunity. She sneaked into Anne's bag, found a cheap necklace she'd bought at school, and hid it under Anne's pillow. Then she ran to John, crying, "Papa, I saw Anne take money from your shop cash box. Check her things." John, confused, searched Anne's room and found the necklace instead. "Anne, what's this?" he asked. Anne's face turned pale. "That's not mine. I lost my necklace weeks ago," she said. Mary chimed in, "Maybe she's lying, Papa." John, unsure, asked Anne to leave. Anne packed her bags, hurt and confused, while Mary hid her triumphant smile. Meanwhile, a new problem brewed at the shop. John had hired a young worker named Timmy to help after Anne left. Timmy was hardworking but curious, often asking John about his family. One day, Timmy found an old ledger hidden in the shop, a record of debts John owed from years ago when his business nearly failed. Timmy didn't tell John he'd found it, but he started watching the family closely, wondering if Mary knew about her father's past struggles. Months passed, and John was alone again. Mary was happy to have him back to herself, but soon, loneliness crept into John's heart. One day, he met a soft-spoken woman named Kate at the church in Omaha. Kate was a teacher, gentle and wise. When John brought her home to meet Mary, Mary greeted her warmly, saying, "Welcome, Kate." But inside, she was already plotting again, her mind buzzing with new ideas from her drama club. Kate stayed with them for a few days. She was kind to Mary, even helping her with schoolwork. Mary pretended to like her, but one night, she snuck into Kate's bag. She found a hairpin and decided to use it for her next plan. Mary scratched the hairpin with a stone to make it look old and rusty, then hid it under John's bed. She sprinkled some strange powder she'd gotten from a market trader around it to make it look suspicious. She wanted her father to think Kate was up to no good. The next morning, John found the hairpin and powder while tidying his room. "Mary! Kate!" he shouted, holding the items up. "What is this?" Kate looked confused and said, "I don't know, John. That's not mine." Mary rushed in, acting shocked. "Papa, maybe Kate is hiding something," she said, pointing at the hairpin. John frowned, unsure, but Kate stayed calm. "John, I swear I've never seen this before," she said softly. Before John could decide, Mary added a twist. "Papa, I saw her sneaking around last night with a candle too." John's eyes narrowed. He didn't trust Kate now and asked her to leave. Kate left quietly, and Mary felt victorious again. But the victory didn't last. A week later, John got a letter from Kate. She wrote that she'd found the real owner of the powder, a trader who admitted selling it to Mary. John confronted Mary, holding the letter. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice stern. Mary's heart raced. She stammered, "No, Papa, she's lying." But John shook his head. "I need time to think," he said, walking away. Mary panicked. She'd been caught, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. Around this time, Timmy approached Mary at the shop. "I know about the ledger," he whispered. "Your father owes money to some people. Does he know you're pushing everyone away?" Mary froze. She hadn't known about the debts, and now Timmy had something over her. "Don't tell him," she begged. Timmy nodded but said, "I keep quiet if you stop your tricks." Mary agreed, but secretly, she planned to deal with him later. Time went by, and John grew lonely once more. One sunny afternoon, while buying supplies for his shop in Omoka, he met a strong, confident woman named Beth. Beth owned a small shop and had a sharp mind. John liked her boldness and soon brought her home to meet Mary. "This is Beth," he said proudly. Beth smiled at Mary and said, "I've heard so much about you." Mary smiled back, but her eyes were cold. She could tell Beth wasn't like the others. She was smart and watchful. Mary knew she'd have to be clever this time, especially with Timmy watching her. Mary watched Beth closely, waiting for a chance to strike. One day, she saw Beth's asthma inhaler in her bag. Mary's eyes lit up. She remembered how her mother had died from asthma, and how much it hurt her father. If Papa knows Beth has asthma, he'll never stay with her, she thought. So, she hatched a new plan. She took a handful of pepper from the kitchen, ground it into powder, and sprinkled it on Beth's pillow while she slept. She hoped the pepper would make Beth cough and reveal her sickness. That night, Mary waited. Soon, she heard coughing from Beth's room. She smiled, thinking her plan was working. But then, she heard her father shouting, "Fire! Fire!" Mary ran out and saw smoke pouring from the house. The pepper had fallen onto a candle Beth lit, and the flame had spread to the curtains. John rushed in, coughing, and pulled Beth out just as the fire grew. Neighbors came to help put it out, but the house was badly damaged. John's arm was burned, and Beth was wheezing from her asthma. The next day, at the hospital in Omina, Mary stood by her father's bed. His arm was wrapped in bandages, and his face was tired. Beth was in another room, recovering. John looked at Mary and said, "Mary, did you do this?" Tears filled Mary's eyes. She fell to her knees and confessed everything, how she'd ruined Anne's stew and framed her with the necklace, how she'd set up Kate with the hairpin and lied about the candle, and how she'd caused the fire to expose Beth. "I just wanted you to myself, Papa," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for this to happen." John shook his head, his voice weak. "Mary, your jealousy almost destroyed us. You hurt people who cared about me, and now look at what's happened." Beth, who had overheard from her bed, rode in on a wheelchair. "Mary," she said gently, "I know you love your father, but love isn't about keeping someone all to yourself. It's about sharing and trusting." Then she added, "I found your drama club notebook in the ashes. It had all your plans written down." Mary gasped. Her secrets were out. But the twist didn't end there. A nurse walked in with a small box. "This was found in the house," she said, handing it to John. Inside was a letter from Mary's late mother, written before she died. It said, "John, if I'm gone, find someone to share your life with. Don't let Mary grow up alone." John's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Mary and said, "Your mother wanted me to be happy. Why couldn't you see that?" Mary broke down, her guilt heavier than ever. Just then, Timmy burst into the room. "Sir, the shop's in trouble," he said. "Some men came looking for the money you owe. I tried to stop them, but they took half the goods." John's face fell. He hadn't told Mary about the old debts, hoping to pay them off quietly. Now, with the house damaged and the shop in chaos, everything was falling apart. Mary realized her tricks had distracted her father from bigger problems. Back at college, Peter had heard about the fire from a friend. Worried, he sent Mary a letter saying, "I hope you're okay. I've always liked you, but I was too shy to say it. If you need a friend, I'm here." Mary read it and felt a pang of regret. She'd been so focused on her father that she'd missed a chance for her own happiness. In the weeks that followed, Mary worked to fix her mistakes. She found Anne and Kate, apologized, and asked for their forgiveness. She returned the cheap necklace to Anne, admitting her trick. She confronted Timmy, who agreed to help John with the shop if Mary stopped her schemes. She started talking to a counselor in Umoja to help her with her jealousy. Slowly, she rebuilt her bond with John, who forgave her but said, "You must earn my trust again." Mary also began to respect Beth, who stayed by John's side as he healed and helped him pay off the debts with her own shop earnings. One day, as Mary helped clean up the shop after the fire, she found an old photo of her mother smiling with John. She realized her mother's love wasn't something to hoard, it was something to share. She wrote back to Peter, thanking him and promising to visit soon. For the first time, Mary felt peace, knowing she could change and let love grow in her life too. Jealousy and selfishness can hurt the people you love and yourself too. Instead of trying to control others, respect their choices and let them be happy. Trust and honesty make relationships strong, while tricks and lies only bring pain. No matter how many mistakes you make, it's never too late to say sorry, learn, and become a better person. Love is bigger when you share it, not when you keep it all to yourself. I hope you enjoyed the story.